Hello friends, today we'll be discussing a very important topic, that's ECG for everyone. Now, why is it important? The importance is because health awareness is increasing day by day and the technology has come to a common man. Why did it start? Because heart attacks are very important cause of death and everybody wants to avoid it. So how it started was that first of all came the heart healthy diet, then came the yoga, stress management, control of liquor intake, to quit smoking, all for the purpose to prevent heart attacks, and also came the era of exercise awareness. That's how many steps do you really walk a day would make the difference in your getting heart attack avoided. And then came the era of automatic blood pressure measurements, and now we have the era of ECG monitoring. Now let's see what is ECG. ECG is electrocardiogram. So electrocardiogram is in fact the graphical representation of the electrical activity of the heart. Now electrocardiograph is the machine which records the ECG. So gram is in fact the graph and the graph is in fact the machine. So old machines, ECG machines, were quite bulky, and nowadays we have ECG machines which are quite small in size, and the latest technology has really made them even smaller with the handheld and even in the form of a wristwatch. Let's see how the electrical activity in the heart is generated. There are two types of chambers. One is the upper one known as the atria and the lower ones are called the ventricles. Now the atrial chamber, which is on the right side, is called right atrium and on the left side is the left atrium, and similarly the ventricle on the right side is the right ventricle and on the left side is the left ventricle. So it is the right atrial upper part which has got the sinoatrial node which generates the electrical activity. From here the electricity passes to the right atrium and then goes on to the left atrium and then ultimately finds the AV node at the junction of atria and ventricle, and from there it goes to the bundle of Fish, bundle branches, and then goes on to the Purkinje fibers and the ventricles. So this is the SA node which is situated on the upper part of the right atrium which generates the electrical current. From there it spreads to the right atrium and then goes on to the left atrium and ultimately reaches the AV node, from where it goes to the bundle of Fish, then bundle branches, the Purkinje fibers, then goes on to the ventricular fibers. The electrical activation of the atrium produces a wave which is known as the P wave. The first half is produced by the right atrium and then the second half is produced by the electrical activity of the left atrium. And then there is an isoelectric line and followed by a QRS complex. Q is the first negative deflection in the QRS complex, and then the upward or the positive deflection is known as the R wave, and followed by the S wave, which is the negative deflection, the second negative deflection, and this is followed by a segment which is isoelectric, and this is followed by another wave. This is called the T wave. Now the electrical activity of the atria produces the P wave, then the current goes on to the ventricle, produces QRS complex, and this is because of the depolarization of the ventricle. Now when the repolarization occurs, then this produces a wave which is called the T wave. So T wave is the repolarization of the ventricle. Now what happens to the repolarization of the atria? Because P wave is produced by the depolarization of the atria, and the repolarization wave of the atria gets buried into the QRS complex. So we don't see the repolarization wave from the atria. Now this deflection is called the P wave, followed by isoelectric line. This line is called the PR segment, that is from the end of P wave to the beginning of QRS complex is PR segment. Now this is followed by the QRS complex and the segment between the end of S wave to the onset of T wave. This is called the ST segment. So PR segment is at the end of P wave to the beginning of QRS complex, and the ST segment is at the end of S wave to the beginning of the T wave. So we have learned what is a wave and what is a segment. Now if we talk about the interval, because this is also commonly used word in the ECG, the interval is a wave plus a segment. In the first interval, that's the PR interval, the P wave is included along with the PR segment is the PR interval. And similarly, the QRS wave along with the ST segment and the T wave is called the QT interval. So QT interval is the QRS wave plus the ST segment plus the T wave. So QT interval has two waves in it, whereas PR interval has only one wave and one segment.